learners, it's time for another exciting math lesson. And to introduce this lesson, I have a special guest for you. You might have guessed it's Grady! Say hi to all the fourth graders! Are you excited for them to learn some math today? All right, well, I'm going to leave him to go probably find a pair of my shoes. So let's get started today. Our I can statement is I can find the perimeter and area of rectangles. Now, this is something that we've worked with in the past when we were getting ready for MEP testing, and you've seen this also when you were in third grade. So perimeter and area are both kinds of measurements. So we're in our measurement unit, so this is the next thing that we're going to be learning about today. So to get started, I would like you to turn in your math journals to page 183. That's where we're going to be working today. Thumbs up when you're there and you're ready to go. Okay, awesome job. Moving on, to begin, we need to figure out what exactly is perimeter and what exactly is area, because if you mix up the two of them, it's going to make it kind of confusing. So perimeter, we can break this word apart to actually understand what it means. That first part, P-E-R-I, the suffix part of our word, that means the word around. In the meter part, for perimeter, that means the word measure. So when you put those two together, it's the measure around something, okay? So for example, in my room at my house right now, I could measure the distance around it. So the key words when you're dealing with perimeter is we want to know around, and you're going to be working with addition. So those are the two A words that I want you to remember when we're dealing with perimeter. Okay? Awesome job. Thumb check. Doing good so far? Let's move on. Grady, that's not yours to chew. All right, we'll get after him later. Okay, so with perimeter, here's an example of a rectangle that you might see. Now, if you notice, it's divided into columns. We talked about columns up and down like that held the ancient runes back in Rome. And also the rows, like row, row, row your boat, so going across. Well, when we're talking about perimeter, the words that we're going to use are length and width. So, Grady, come on back here so I can use you again. All right. Length is going to be your distance across the rectangle. So think about how long Grady is. And width is the distance up and down of your rectangle. So that's the way that I like to remember. Thank you. You did a good job. The way that I like to remember this is length, when you look at the letters, is a longer word, and width is up and down. When you look at the letters W and you look at the D and you look at the T and you look at the H, those are going up and down to measure the width. So in this case, the length of this rectangle is 4. You can count that across, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the width is 3, going up and down. So we have to figure out the formula for how we can find the perimeter of a rectangle. You just got done with your algebra unit, so you guys are really used to writing a lot more complicated formulas. So for perimeter, length is going to be represented by an L, width is represented by a W, and perimeter itself is going to be by a capital letter P, okay? So you learned last unit that those are just simply variables, so then that way you don't have to write out the whole word when you're working with your formula. So the way we can write this is L plus W equals P in the end. And why do you think I would have 2 L's and 2 W's? Think about that. Okay, I'm sure some of you at this point would be able to say, well, Miss Young, if you look at a rectangle, you've learned that a rectangle has 2 sets of equal sides. Right, Grady? Just like Grady has his 2 sets of paws that are the same, right? So length plus W is equal to perimeter. We also can write this in a shorter way. We're all about making things faster, right? Especially when you're doing your homework. So if you have length plus your width, and you times that by 2, you're going to get perimeter. So it's the same thing. Take a look at those 2 formulas, and you can see that they're saying the exact same thing, except the second one is just a little bit shorter. Now, why would we have it in parentheses? Well, remember what we learned last time about pink monkeys drive automobiles speedily? That's what we're going to do first before we multiply that whole thing twice. So in this case, we have two sides that have a length of 4, and we have two sides that have a width of 3. So if I were trying to complete this perimeter, I'm remembering that it's addition. I'm going to be thinking addition, adding up all the way around. I would add up 4 plus 4 plus 3 plus 3, and I would get a perimeter of 14. I'm going to let you go ahead now and complete questions 1 through 4 on the page you're at in your math journal. So I'll pause the video and we'll jump back in it when you're finished. So go ahead and work at your table group. So sit right at your desks and work right with your group. Happy learning! Okay, by now you probably have had time to finish working on those problems. So we're going to move on to talking about the second half of our learning goal, which is area of a rectangle. So this is going to be on page 184 in your math journals. So go ahead and flip your page if you haven't already. An area, when we're dealing with that, is the total number of square units that cover a figure. So for example, if I was covering Grady with his blanket, right? Come up here. If I was covering Grady with his blanket and he was going to go night-night, I would not want to have him covered with just the perimeter of a blanket. That would mean Grady would only have the outside of the blanket. We would want to be able to cover him with the whole area, the inside of the blanket, right? Okay. So when you look at this figure, once again, the rectangle, the key words that you're going to be looking at are inside and multiplication. Those are your key words. So instead of working with addition this time, we're going to be dealing inside the rectangle and we're going to multiply. Well, what are we going to multiply? Here's your formula for area. Length, once again, represented by L. Width, once again, represented by W. Only this time we're dealing with area. So area is equal to A. Pretty simple. Now, when you do the formula for area, you're going to multiply your length times your width. So once again, you're going to look at how many square spaces are going across and how many square spaces are going up and down for your width. And you're going to multiply just your length times your width. Notice we're not going to be adding length and length and width like we did for perimeter. That would be finding the outside. This time we're dealing with the inside of the rectangle. So we're going to be looking at the inside. So length this time is 4 again. Width is represented by 3. So if I plug and chug that into my formula, I'm going to get area equals 12 in the end. So at this time, I would like you to complete questions 5 through 8 on the page in your math journal. And once again, work right with your table group and we'll jump back in again in just a couple minutes. All right, by this time, you've probably had time to complete your problems. So now it's time for some practice more independently. So the first part is going to be with a partner. So after I give these instructions, I'm going to have you make eye contact with that person. So you'll have a chance to go around the room and work together. So what you're going to be doing is first completing problems 9 and 10 on page 185 in your math journal. So that will give you a chance to look at some problems where you're going to do both perimeter and area. And number 2, on a scrap piece of paper, so grab one in the back, I would like you to brainstorm some real life situations where perimeter and area would be used. An example I can give you, I can remember when we had to carpet our living room when I was growing up. And so we needed to know the area of our living room so that way we could get the correct amount of carpet. So that's one example that I could put down for an area where it would really be used in real life. When you're finished with both of those, number 1 and number 2, you're going to have some practice on your own. And for this, I would like you to complete problems 11 through 18 on page 186 in your math journal. So today we learned that we can find the area and the perimeter of rectangles, and that's a different kind of measurement that we're able to see in real life. So he's now chewing on a stuffed animal he found in the house. Grady, come on back over here so you can say goodbye. All right, say goodbye, fourth graders. Happy learning.